Hello, welcome to this video about Blender 2.63. Here we'll go over some of the Blender basics, how to configure the user interface, some user preferences that you might like to go with, and how to navigate around your 3D scene. So this will be something like the scene that greets you when you first start Blender. On the splash screen are some links for the manual and the Blender website and that sort of thing. But there's also an option over here on the right to change the default key mapping for people coming from Maya or so. I'd suggest trying to use the Blender defaults if possible. Click anywhere to get rid of the splash screen. Let's take a look around the main window. Here's the 3D viewport where you'll be doing most of the work. With the default objects we have here are the infamous default cube. We have a lamp over here and the camera. We use right click to select these objects, and the A key on the keyboard will deselect everything if you have a selection, or if nothing is selected, it'll select all the objects. The 3D view and some of the other editors have panels which can be revealed or hidden on the side of the view using the N and T keys. So the 3D view has a tool panel over on the left hand side which is operated with the T key, and a properties panel over on the right hand side which works using the N key. There are also these little tabs with cross in them which can work the panels just like that, and they can be also collapsed in if you just drag the border and push them in like that. Now, this whole interface is actually a set of smaller editors which have been split into the main window. I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment. However, the windows we have over here by default are the outliner here, where you can see all the objects in your scene. You can also select them there with a left click. Below that is the properties editor, where you'll find settings for rendering, how the world should look, and materials and modifiers which belong to the selected object. Along the bottom then is the timeline. This is used for animation and physics simulations, and here you can see play, stop, rewind, all the usual stuff there. At the top of the screen is a small thin window called the info window, and here you'll find the file menu with the usual suspects inside, and this is also one way to reach the user preferences, which we'll go over in a little while. In the info window you can choose from various preset layouts also, and so if you wanted to be doing some video editing, say, you could choose the video editing layout here. And a quick way to change between these is to use Control and the left and right arrows to choose them there. We'll just go back to the default layout. Now, each of these editors can be changed into any other type of editor by using the button on the far left hand side of the header. Now, headers can actually reside at the bottom or the top of the screen. So for example, the header of the 3D view here is on the bottom, and we can right click on the header and choose flip to top if we like, or using the key F5 with hovering over the window will also allow you to flip those. So for example, the outliner here, we could change it into a 3D view just like the main window there. Or we could change it into something like a UV image editor here if you wanted to have a picture for reference purposes or something like that. It's up to you. So I'll just change this back into the outliner. So it's fairly common to split the 3D view into two. So sometimes we might have, say, both if we wanted to have a front view and, say, a left-hand side view, we could do that. So we use these echelons in the corner of the screen and just drag across in order to split the view. If we want to split in the other direction, we can just hold and drag down in that direction, and we can create as many views of these as we like. To combine them then, we drag the echelons back across into the nearest window, or if you wanted to join in the other direction, you just drag first one way and then drag down into in the other direction. One can also right click the borders and choose split area here, and you can also right click and choose join area, and that gives you the same sort of result there. So to move around the 3D scene then, using the middle mouse you can rotate the view. Shift and the middle mouse will allow panning, and the scroll wheel there will be zooming in and out. You can also achieve zooming by holding down Control Shift and using the middle mouse and moving the mouse sort of up and down, just like that. If you lose track of your object in the scene, you can press the numpad decimal in order to focus on the selected object, and this will also recenter the point at which the scene is rotating around. If your scene is not rotating around the selected object, then you can press numpad decimal to make that happen. The number pad also allows us to view the object from, say, front view with number pad 1, a side view or right hand side view with number pad 3, and the top view with number pad 7. Control numpad 1 would show you the back view. Control numpad 3 is the left hand side view, as opposed to the right hand side view, and control numpad 7 is the bottom view there. Number pad 5 will allow you to switch between orthographic and perspective views. You can see up on the top left corner, front perspective. If we press number pad 5, we'll go into an orthographic view, and it's fairly common to use the orthographic view when modeling, so that perspective isn't taken into account. On to the user preferences then. If we can press Ctrl Alt U to get the user preferences up, or as I say, you can find it in the file menu. There's a couple of few things that I would change here. By default, I've loaded the factory settings in order to begin this video. So first one I might have a look at is the rotate around selection option here in the interface. Now if I just if I left click over here and just go Shift A, because I need a few more objects here, maybe I can Shift D and duplicate the cube somewhere. I'll just make a few of these just like that. So at the moment the scene kind of rotates along. It's supposed to rotate along the origin of the scene. Occasionally it won't, and if you're zooming in on, say, an object here and you find that it's not rotating exactly how you want, you can press the number pad decimal point to change the rotation of the scene there, or if you select the rotate around selection option in the user preferences, then that will happen kind of automatically. So you can see if I now select the sphere over here, how the view rotates along around that. My personal preference, rather than rotate around selection, is to have auto depth on, and this works a little bit differently. So how will I demonstrate that? Without auto depth on and without rotate around selection on, as I say, you can't really control it very well unless you press the number pad period and number pad decimal. Auto depth will take the depth of the object underneath the mouse cursor as the rotation point. So without actually selecting anything here, if I have my cursor over the sphere here, you can see how we're rotating around that object. And similarly, if I choose now this object over here, you can see how that's working. Okay, zoom to mouse position is another one that I'd like to turn on, so I'm going to select that now. That's pretty self-explanatory. It means if you wherever you have the mouse is where the view will zoom to. So I find that fairly useful. So those are the ones that I would change in here. I mean, it's up to you, your personal preference really, what you'd like to do. In the editing panel then, the only option that I would change here is perhaps the release confirms here. Now this works if we perform what we call a tweak operation on the object, and that is to say, if I hold down the right mouse button and drag a few pixels, it'll actually pick the object up, or the vertex up if you're in edit mode. And now we need to press the left mouse in order to confirm where it gets placed. So with release confirms on, I can tweak the object, and keeping right mouse held down, then if I release it, it'll that confirms it, hence the name release confirms. So if I was to be in edit mode on this object, I know we haven't covered the different modes of the 3D view yet. Suffice to say that the different modes that a 3D view can be in are down at the bottom here on the left hand side, and you can also switch between object mode and edit mode using the tab key. So object mode is where you manipulate objects kind of as a whole, and edit mode is where you manipulate the mesh belonging to the object. So tweak mode over here with the release confirmed set, you can see how I could simply push and pull vertices fairly easily. The normal method for doing this would be to select a vertex and press G to grab and then left click, but I mean if you were doing a lot of this, then you could just you can use this release confirms option there. So that's all I would change in the editing section. The input section is where you can turn on your emulate 3-button mouse if you don't have the 3-button mouse, and one option I would change in here is to have this continuous grab on. So in order to demonstrate that, if I just turn it off quickly, if I go out of edit mode and select this object here, if I was to press S to scale it and hold down shift to move in smaller increments, you'll see that when the cursor reaches the side of the screen, it stops, and I'd have to repeat the operation. With continuous grab enabled, I can scale, hold down shift, and the mouse cursor will leave one side of the screen and enter in the other. So you don't need to stop in order to perform operations like that. So I would have that on. Emulate number pad is there, so if you don't have the number pad 1, 3 and 7 keys to change into your front, left and top views, you can select that. The other one is the orbit style here. Turntable by the default is not what I'm used to. You'll see if I grab say the top right hand side of the screen and rotate, you can see how the scene is kind of rotating about the horizontal, I suppose you'd call it, whereas with trackball enabled, the view will actually roll, and you can't do that with the trackball. But it's up to you, it's personal preference which you're used to. I personally am used to the trackball, so I'm going to have that selected. I think that is about all. The add-ons section is where you can enable and disable add-ons. Now I've enabled the screencast keys here so that you can see what I'm pressing in the 3D view on the left hand side then. I won't cover these in this video, suffice to say that's where they are, and that's where you can enable them and stuff. So my suggestion would be because after you've set your preferences, you'd want to set press the Save As Default button here so that you get your preferences each time you start Blender. The only issue with pressing this is it also saves the scene as we have it right now. So my suggestion is then to set your preferences and save as default from a new scene, or load the factory settings and then set them up. So that you get the default scene each time, or at least make sure you have the scene set up how you'd like it to be each time. Okay, hopefully that gives you a reasonable introduction to Blender. My aim is to cover manipulating objects more in depth in the next video, so for now that's all. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.